In a different universe, if Rolex decided to collaborate with Seiko, what would that watch look like?
Oh, please, not one of those.
I'll just make my own, Seiko style. Okay, to start this build, here is the 4R34 GMT movement featuring a decomplication. Now I had this one in my parts storage for some time now because it's the very same movement that I harvested from my SSK003. That poor watch has been in pieces ever since I posted my Seiko 5 GMT modding guide a few months ago. So I'm happy to finally give this perfectly good movement a new home. Like any other movement, I regulate its performance and test it on the time grapher. Based on 4 different tested positions, what's shown on screen is the worst reading, so overall it's performing quite well. Now here's the custom movement holder that I machined from scratch in my last video. Please give it a watch if you haven't already. I've been using it for every single assembly thus far and I absolutely love it. So I mount on the 4R34, give it a clean, and perform another test to make sure everything is functioning properly. This includes winding, day crossover, and quick setting. Now the dial I picked out is an OEM Seiko part, and it requires some customization to fit properly on the GMT movement. So I'm off to a different workbench to do some handwork. Now with the dial all prepped, I go wash my hands and put on a fresh set of finger cots because being clean is essential. The dial fits perfectly, so I can move on to the hands. Obviously, being a GMT, I need a GMT hand, hour hand, minute hand, and second hand. My 2-part movement holder design can be seen in action here because the main body of the holder fits perfectly on my version hand setter. I purposely designed this holder to work in conjunction with my other tool. The process for installing hands onto a GMT movement is essentially the same as a standard movement. I suppose it is more difficult since the spacing between hands is tighter and alignment becomes that much more important. So with the internals all done for now, I move on to the casework. The internals are cleaned up and the GMT chapter ring is set into place. I temporarily case up the movement to set and confirm alignment between the chapter ring and dial. I won't have access to the chapter ring once the crystal is in place, so any alignment issues need to be solved right here and now. Now with the double dome sapphire crystal set, I can case up the movement to work on the remaining external parts. The rotating bezel gasket is put into place and the part is then fitted onto the rest of the watch. The action of the bezel is tested and broken in for a bit. This is when I can tell whether or not any adjustments need to be made. Can you guess how many stems are in the box? Post your best guess in the comments below. I'll give a prize to anyone who gets it right. Now the stem is cut to size, fitted onto the crown and prepped with a little grease on the gasket. This is a diverse, so the crown and caseback are both screw downs for 200 meters of water resistance. With the crown assembly in place, I can retest all of its functions just to be safe. The reason why I tested the functions at the very start of the build is because if there is something obviously wrong with the movement, I would have had to disassemble most of the watch, so always test early on when possible. The underside is given a thorough clean, the lubricated gasket is set, and the watch is now ready for its caseback. Now I made a custom caseback for this watch to give it a nice finishing touch. Both the Yoon Custom and Adventure model name are raised engravings. I did film a behind the scenes video for my channel members which shows the process of designing to actually making this custom part. If you want to see more of the making process behind these custom parts, please do consider becoming a Loomshot channel member. It directly supports all that I do here on YouTube and I greatly appreciate it. With the case back screwed in, I can now move on to the last part of the build, the bezel insert. This last part really ties everything together, so let me get a bracelet on this watch and we'll break down the specs and features of the Adventurer. Before we take a closer look, again, if you're interested in purchasing this watch or any other custom watch that I've made, please check out my website, loom-shot.com to place an order. Links can be found on the screen and in the description box below. So the Adventurer is 42mm in diameter, but wears like a 40 like the SKX because the lug to lug is just under 46. I have a 16cm wrist size and you can see it fits well on my smaller size. For other basic specs, it is just under 13.5mm thick, excluding the double dome sapphire crystal, and has a 22mm lug width. The movement is the 4R34 GMT, which is the same as the NH34. The crystal is double dome sapphire with clear AR. Dial is an OEM Seiko part. The hands are loomed with C3, crown is signed S, and the insert is made of steel with a loom marker at 12. I personally gravitate towards darker dial watches, but for some reason I've grown really fond of this design. It's a light or bright appearing watch with accents of orange found on the GMT hand and bezel insert. I could have added more orange throughout, but I'm a firm believer of less is more and the amount of color present just feels perfectly balanced. Aside from looking cool, the Adventurer is also a really functional watch. With a silver whitish dial, the black hands make it super easy to read the time. The GMT hand with its splash of color is also easy to read against the dial, but in addition, its orange accent makes it easy to distinguish amongst the other hands. Of course, to provide the GMT function, the chaptering has the GMT markings, which I personally like more than having markings on a bezel. It just keeps everything looking clean and all aspects of telling the time, whether it's home or GMT, can be found on or next to the watch dial. Now because the GMT function is taken care of by the chaptering, this allows freedom to choose any bezel insert that I want, and once I had the initial watch design done, I knew this insert would be the perfect fit. It provides readings in 5-minute intervals until 60, and of course a very practical placement of lume at 12. We got the GMT aspect covered, in addition to a dive bezel function. So the Adventurer is my interpretation of the Rolex Explorer, but in a Seiko style. Like all of my other custom Seiko designs, I wanted this watch to give off the feel of being OEM, if that makes any sense. If anything, I think it's much nicer than all those Seiko mods you see online now that are obviously Rolex copies with a fake Seiko logo slapped on afterwards. No disrespect, just seems like a lack of creativity. So it was a pleasure to show you guys the Adventurer. Thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a like, subscribe, consider becoming a channel member for behind the scenes content and more, and I'll see you guys later.